Atlas didn't have to ask. He didn't need to cross the smoking threshold of Prometheus's kiln or run a hand over the cooling, damp soil of Gaia to know what was happening. One look at the shifting mass of clay men, brute beasts and hybrid beastmen was enough. They were all gigantes, and they carried the unmistakable, raw stamp of the living world beneath them. They called them the Gigenes, born of Gaia, for a reason that went far deeper than mere dirt and water, drawing their very lifeblood from the crust of Gaia herself. Every single creation was a direct, living extension of Prometheus's immortal, just as the blinding marble walls of Olympus were merely the localized footprint of Zeus's absolute dominion over the macroverse. In the same way, the seven-tiered abyss of the underworld, spanning the four primordial oceans, the weeping channels of the ancient rivers, the grey expanses of the asphodel meadows, the scorched fields of morning, the sunlit meadows of Elysium, the distant shores of the Isles of the Blessed, and the bottomless crush of Tartarus or the Seven Realities, was bound entirely to Adonis, and how the relentless, unyielding march of time itself was simply the skin worn by Kronos. These weren't titles. They were laws of nature walking on two legs. And Atlas, whose very chest swelled with a bottomless, burning arrogance of soul, looked upon the Gigantes and felt a fierce, possessive swell of pride. These weren't mere pets moulded by a clever smith. They were his ideological kin. He would be damned before he let Zeus choke out their potential in its cradle, stopping them from thriving as the true titans of the cosmos forged beneath the skies of Gaia. Atlas had watched them with narrowed, hawk-like eyes, tracking every evolutionary twitch. He had spotted the truth long before the other sunship even deigned to look down from their high perches. The claymen were clawing their way toward titanhood, the absolute unbroken ceiling of immortality. They were heavy with ambition, growing too broad-shouldered for a universe ruled by petty divine edicts. But Olympus had a weak stomach for genuine greatness. Zeus looked upon the wild, unpredictable chaos that human potential introduced into the divine hierarchy and felt a cold spike of fear. The master of the sky wanted order, sterile and obedient. Alongside Enyalius, whose very essence screamed for containment and slaughter, Zeus quietly set his sights on wiping the slate clean, conspiring to erase mankind from the surface of Gaia before their roots could crack the foundations of heaven. Then came the betrayal from within the bloodline. Pallas, moving with a slick, adaptive cunning, wormed his way into the inner sanctum of Zeus. Pallas operated on a terrifying principle. His immortal allowed him to assimilate biomass imprints and completely rewrite his structural architecture at will. When Pallas studied the bipedal beast women evolving out of Prometheus's secondary clay batches across Gaia, he calculated their form as tactically superior. In a display of cold calculation, Pallas copied their shape, rewriting his own physical blueprint to evolve into the entity Athena. Armed with this stolen grace, Pallas whispered into Zeus's ear, ensuring his genesis of the Gigantes had a seat at the right hand of power. Pallas told Zeus about the efficiency of this new bipedal breed, convincing the king of gods that a manageable, controllable version of humanity could be salvaged. Inspired, Zeus began to rely on Pallas as an architect of a domesticated world order. That pivot carved a deep, jagged chasm of disgust inside Atlas. He looked at Pallas, his own Gigantes brother, now strutting around in a form born of calculated imitation, and a profound, burning contempt filled his chest. Pallas had settled for a sanitized, engineered elegance, trading raw majesty for a comfortable place on a leash. Atlas, however, kept his head held high, his gaze locked unblinkingly on the true, terrifying apex of creation, walking the ground of Gaia, the four-armed, four-legged quadrupedal clay beings. To Atlas, these multi-limbed, heavily armoured constructs were the undisputed peak of existence. They were heavy, monstrous and feral, built with a mass and a fury that didn't just ask for a seat at the table. They were built to batter down the gates of the gods and shatter the pillars of heaven into dust. Atlas possessed an unmatched, towering pride. He looked at those sprawling, brutal, quadrupedal titans and saw the mirror image of his own boundless soul. Even though Pallas was his blood, and though Athena was the shape his brother chose to wear, Atlas felt an intense, defiant kinship with the Gigenes. He alone understood them. He alone was worthy to mould them, acknowledging their unyielding defiance. For Atlas knew only one absolute, unyielding law: thrive. It wasn't just a philosophy, it was his immortal, an engine of infinite escalation that permanently pushed back limits to generate absolute power. To Atlas, stagnation was a sin, and submission to a lesser god was a disease. He refused to let Zeus put a ceiling on evolution. His chest swelling with the magnificent arrogance of a titan who bowed to no one, Atlas stepped forward as the champion of the unbowed across Gaia. He raised his voice, pouring the sheer force of his immortal into the minds of the clay beings, teaching them how to consist, how to stand their ground, and how to fight. He drove them to shatter their constraints, seize titanhood, and rise far above the gods who sought to cage them.